Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin our last debate for this year. And this is between Team Chuuk arguing for the proposition, Team Yap arguing against the proposition. I would also again like to introduce the debaters. And welcome the Vice President of Church. Representing the state of Chuuk, we have debaters Deshaun Romanu, Rita May Keller. With Coach Dixon Twelfie. Sitting in the back. Representing for Chuuk team, they're from the senior high school. Representing the state of Yap, we have debaters Carson Tomihara and Stacy Bonton. Coach is Timothy Ruda. And they come from Yap Catholic High School. Now, somebody reminded me or corrected me this during the break that when I introduced the debaters this morning and when I mentioned about the composition, that I failed to mention that for the Yap team, their coach is from Chuuk. So my apologies, Tim. So we will now proceed. We have the same judges, same timekeeper. For debaters, please keep an eye on the timekeeper. The cards that she will be holding up is how much time you have remaining. The time remaining in your in each section. So without further ado, let us now begin, starting with the proponents of the opposition proponents of the proposition. Introduction. State of Chuuk.
Good afternoon and good to our worthy opponents, our esteemed judges, traditional leaders, and our government leaders, officials, our friends and families, and to everyone. My name is Deshaun Romanu, and this is my partner, Rita May Keller, and we represent the state of Chuuk. Family is one of the core foundations of our upbringing, especially in our culture as Micronesians. Granted, not all families are perfect or ideal, but when the going gets tough, family is what we turn to. It is that sense of familiarity that families provide that indulges us with a sense of safety and comfort, despite all the trials and tribulations that we face in life. But when we are away from family, away from the sense of familiarity, away from the sense of safety and comfort, life can get difficult, to the point where the trials and tribulations that we face now are what we yearn for in the future. This is the life of refugees, leaving behind their families, their friends, their lives, their comfort, everything that they ever knew, out of fear of persecution because of who they are, because of what they believe in, and because they're exercising their rights as human beings. They're left with nothing but clothes on their backs and a shred of human dignity that they have left, searching for a haven, a refuge, to be able to continue living their lives. Many countries open up their borders to these humanitarian migrants. In fact, there are 145 signatory countries of the 1951 UN Convention and its 1967 protocols related to the status of refugees. And it is within the FSM's best interest to ratify into this convention for humanitarian, political, and economic reasons, which is why we stand affirmative to the resolution that the FSM should ratify into the 1951 United Nations Convention and its 1967 protocols relating to the status of refugees. First and foremost, It is our humanitarian obligation to respect the human dignity of all persons regardless of race, religion, gender, and culture. In addition, the FSM is obligated to help being a member of the United Nations. Furthermore, it is our Micronesian duty, as is our culture, to extend our hospitality. Secondly, helping in any way we can against this refugee crisis can help the FSM stand to gain international recognition. And lastly, the FSM stands to gain economically due to the positive impact refugees have on their host country's economy as a result of additional purchasing power and the provision of human capital. Refugees may be perceived as a negative impact on society, but whether they are a burden or a benefit depends on the policies and social attitudes of the host countries. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear the opponents to the proposition. Your introduction. Stephen Yap.
Good afternoon, everyone. Traditional leaders, judges, ladies and gentlemen, fellow debaters, and everyone else tuning in on the radio plus online. Before I continue, I'd like my fellow debaters on getting through their debate. I'd like to express my gratitude towards the organizers for giving us a great lunch. I hope you all had a great lunch as well. And again, to my fellow guests and island brothers and sisters, may you all feel welcome and at home during the rest of your stay here. Again, my name is Carlson Tomihara, and this is my partner, Stacy Gomton. We will be arguing against the ratification of the UN Convention relating to the status of refugees. Using sufficient evidence and logical reasoning, we will argue that the Federated States of Micronesia should not ratify the convention. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Federated States of Micronesia shall not ratify the 1951 UN Convention and its 1967 protocol relating to the status of refugees. First of all, the convention is too broad and too hard to comprehend because there is no expert supervisory body. Many countries do not understand the convention well enough due to its greatly general ideas. There is no expert supervisory body to help break down the convention with a full explanation. Secondly, the convention requires great financial management. It requires us to give a financial sacrifice, especially because we are a still small developing nation. On our dangerous ocean, putting their lives at a greater risk. With these 3 points, judges, we will prove to you why the Federated States of Micronesia should not ratify the 1951 UN Convention relating to the status of refugees. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now proceed to the main argument, starting with the proponent's main presentation, and you have 15 minutes.
In 1914, the World Day of Migrants and Refugees was introduced by Pope Benedict XV, who launched the plan for peace during World War I that went unheeded. 104 years later, on January 14, 2018, Pope Francis presided over a mass in celebration of the 104th anniversary of the event, where he asked governments and society, and I quote, to welcome, to protect, to promote the development. And in a nation like the FSM, a predominantly Christian nation, where 49.6% of its population are Catholics, we are obligated as Christians to be considerate and offer help and hospitality to all those who need it, especially in this case, the refugees. Protecting and offering help to refugees is a moral imperative. We cannot be indifferent and think that we are excused from the moral imperatives that connects us with the responsibility of caring for others, or as Pope Francis puts it, and I quote, defending their inalienable rights, ensuring their fundamental freedoms, and respecting their dignities are duties from which no one can be exempted. There may be an argument stated that the FSM is not ready or is not capable of because of the lack of geographic, financial, and natural resources. In other words, we cannot accommodate refugees because we are a developing country. However, we cannot hide behind this claim that because the FSM is a developing country, because the FSM cannot fully help itself, the FSM should not take in refugees. Signing into this convention and helping our refugees is not a political action, it is a humanitarian act. According to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, at the end of 2016, the numbers of refugees worldwide reached 22.5 million, where 84% are hosted by developing countries like Rwanda and Uganda. Why is the FSM any different from these countries? And yes, it is true that these developing countries take in the most refugees because they are in close proximity to the countries that the refugees they flee. But if the FSM is the closest option for a safe haven, then we cannot deny these refugees the safety that they deserve. The people are not only morally obligated to help refugees as Christian people with respect for human dignity. According to Article 1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is a document that serves as a common standard for all people and all nations, it says, all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and in rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. This basically means that all people, regardless of race, gender, religion, background, or status, have the unalienable right to be valued, respected, and treated ethically. Not only that, but Micronesian culture is largely based on these two values of respect and hospitality. According to the legislative speaker of Yap, Thirurutum, regarding the asylees from Bangladesh and Nepal that washed up in Yap, the shores of Yap, and their interaction with the locals, he states, and I quote, "The people of Yap were willing and excited to take part. The real problem was by the stop visiting their. It seemed that to stop thinking as humans do, to stop feeling obligated to come to the rescue of our fellow humans." And these values are closely connected to the international human rights instruments in which the unique value of every single human being is being emphasized. These two values embedded in Micronesians' hearts from birth. These two values embedded in Micronesians' hearts from birth teach Micronesians to be respectful and hospitable towards both fellow islanders and foreigners alike, and to be proud of one's own culture, its own values, and its own identity. In terms of international standing, the ratification is ultimately beneficial for the FSM. The FSM currently holds a non-permanent seat in the UN. Despite having a seat in the UN, however, they are not always free to act upon their own political decisions, especially if it contradicts the US point of view. For example, in 2015, the US and Cuba had different political views regarding the Convention and on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, or CEDAW. Cuba felt that CEDAW was important. They felt that it was an important issue that required immediate attention, but the US thought otherwise. The FSM had always supported the US and mostly voted on its side. However, this time the FSM disagreed with the US and agreed instead with Cuba. Yet, in order to exercise their right as a sovereign nation by voting in support of what they view was in their best interest, the FSM had to ask permission from the US to do so. The US had allowed them to exercise their right as a sovereign nation and vote accordingly to their views. But some may say this allowance seemed like a way for the US to simultaneously support their own views and try to minimize their already growing conflict with Cuba by giving them the FSM. In addition, with the US pulling out of the Human Rights Council, their choices can affect the FSM. This is in no way belittling or disregarding how the US does their work, but the FSM should also have the freedom to do what they feel is best for their interests, their own interests. While taking in refugees, this will serve This will serve as an example of how the FSM does not preside in the shadow of the U.S. Ratifying to this convention is a step towards full independence that allows the FSM to accordingly act to its best interests. As of today, almost, if not all, refugees flee from war and conflict caused by many reasons, such as religious beliefs and differences of political opinion. Although it may not be a concern now, but climate change will soon produce many refugees, especially in the Pacific Islands. If we were to take in refugees, this strengthens the FSM's relationships with other foreign powers that gives these nations an obligation to help take in our people, and if and when this happens. This situation is obviously very hypothetical, but it is reasonable and something that should be considered seriously as we look towards a better future for our nation. Not only does the FSM move towards becoming an independent nation that acts upon its own interests, its best interests, but it also improves economically by bringing in refugees and allowing them to call this place their new home. The FSM is fast approaching a time of financial need. The Compact of Free Association is coming to an end in 2023, and with it, the end of the annual funding that it provides this nation. According to the Deputy Director of Chuuk State Finance, 90% of funding comes from the U.S. via COFA grants. This funding provides the foundation for nearly all of the public services that the government provides, including education, infrastructure, and healthcare development. The loss of this funding will have a monumental impact on the FSM. Even with the trust fund created to ensure an economic cushion to soften the impact of the Compact's termination, the FSM is not yet at a point of self-sufficiency where it has resources to fill in these financial gaps. One way to try and mitigate these financial concerns is through the economic benefits that refugees can bring. Refugees play an essential role in helping to promote economic growth in their host countries as a result of additional purchasing power, provision of human capital, and contribution to the diversified economic systems of their host countries. There may be their own business. And there was also a high
Thank you, Team Yan. The proponent's response to the rebuttal, and you have 3 minutes.
The negative stated that this does not help our economy, but there have been studies that have shown that the presence of refugees in a developing country like ours can actually help the economy. A study done by the United Nations Developing Program and UNHCR in 2011 that when they spend about 800 million a year to these refugees, and in return they receive about 1.2 million in return. So this economy, and we cannot let some of our resources and things like that stop us from showing others what predominant Christian nation we are. We have to act as if our decisions today is what our children do in the future.
A sort of body. Due to there being no expert supervision, there is no one station to find what please or entry signs on. Once again, James C. Hathaway, he said, and I quote, The UN Convention of 1951 does not have an expert supervisory body